Hello and welcome to another edition of Policy Watch with me, Ishan Russell. This is the show where we analyze the big economic policy decisions of the week and their impact. Our focus today is on two big decisions. One of the GST Council on the exemption threshold and the sharing of tax administration powers between the centre and the states. And the other focus is on the formation of the Monetary Policy Committee, a new mechanism that ensures that not just the RBI governor alone will be responsible for the formulation of the monetary policy. Joining me to discuss these issues are Bhattacharya, consulting editor at the Business Standard, and Ajay, former Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Now, first, let's talk about the decisions of the GST Council and the road ahead for the implementation of the goods and services tax. Shubham, I'll start with you. GST, I mean, this has been a hot topic for the past 1 year, and we seem to be really moving forward this time around. We've decided the exemption threshold, and in terms of responsibilities also between the centre and the states, the GST Council seems to be thrashing out issues, and we seem to be on course to hit the deadline that we've set ourselves.
That's right, Ishan. I mean, now it's clear that the movement is forward. It's not back and forth. And also, unexpectedly, lots of people were expecting that, the constitutional amendment, while traveling to the states, will take a lot of time. It took just about a month for the requisite number of 15 states to come on board and approve it. So that's great. The second part, the GST Council, which has been formed, has also started and has also started in right earnest. So, and it is actually moving in the way that one would expect the decisions to be taken. So, for instance, yesterday, what it has decided is that the threshold, that means that the level below which a trader will not come under GST, will be set at 20 lakh for the general states and 10 lakh for the northeastern states. So essentially, this means that we are extremely within the target of 1st April.
Okay.
There will be lots of things that will happen for GST to work out. GST by itself is not something that, starts on, say, 1st April and then that's the way and nothing changes. There'll be lots and lots of changes over the years, and it'll take about, I would expect, 2 to 3 years to stabilize.
Okay.
But there's no doubt about the fact that we will definitely be shifting our indirect tax system to the GST system from 1st April 2017.
All right, Mr. Dua, the point being that in terms of the road ahead, as Shubham was pointing out, it'll take 2 to 3 years at least for it to stabilize. But in terms of the bipartisan support and that everybody's coming together, working towards a plan, working towards that deadline, it's rather rare. And it seems that in terms of the tax administration in the country, this is the one big reform that the government had been talking about for quite some time, wanted to make its sort of a crown jewel, and is headed in that direction.
Undoubtedly, it's a transformational change in the tax regime of the country. On that, I think that there be no doubt at all. The question is, would we be able to bring in this change on the 1st of April 2017, and would it be a wholesale change, or are we just going to be, as was mentioned, we will switch over? If it is only a switch over without all the consequential actions, then I think it may, the transition or the teething period, we could see a lot of pain rather than ease. And that's my fear. Though as you mentioned, the constitutional amendment was passed within a month after the parliament had endorsed it. The states didn't take too long. But I'm still not sure whether every state is on board or not. And I have in mind a last-minute change in mind in the state of West Bengal.
Okay.
Tamil Nadu has been more forthright. Tamil Nadu government hasn't supported it at all. They have their own reservations. The 16 states, certainly to enable the constitutional amendment to go through, supported it.
Okay.
Of the remaining 14, we are 29 plus 1 UT also as a legislature. We do need to have everybody on board, because the changes or the decision making in the council is by a 3/4 majority, which means almost every state, the center has to be on board.
Right.
More important, that even if it's just the 3/4, right now we don't have the 3/4 number unless we have more states on board. The question is, whatever is decided by this council, GST Council, has then to be passed by every state legislature by way of a separate GST law.
Okay.
What has been passed is a GST constitutional amendment, but the law has to be passed by every state.
Okay.
If a state, one or two states, particularly the larger ones, are not able to adhere to the time schedule or have any differences with what is a decision taken on a 3/4 majority even, then we're not going to see a countrywide switch over to the GST, which I think is the exact rationale for going in for this change,
Okay.
that the country becomes a united market.
Okay.
And that's my fear.
All right. And would you share that fear as well, Shubhamay? Given the fact that we've given ourselves that deadline of 1st April 2017, could there be haste? And in that haste, could we see differences emerge between states, as he was saying? Tamil Nadu is still not on board.
You'd see the differences was expected to be much more stronger. I am not going by a priori assumption that there will be differences. That is what we had assumed. But from the actual implementation roadmap that we are seeing now, the differences seem to be much less than was thought of initially. So my assumption is, or rather my presumption is, that there is going to be a much more congruence on the GST thing. There's definitely no doubt that once the taxation regime changes, even if a state says that I am not on board on GST, for instance, I have approved the constitutional amendment is already there, so the country is already on the GST map, but I will not say come onto the GST platform. The state actually opens up its trade and industry for a fair amount of trouble.
Okay.
It's actually going to be a pressure for that state itself. It's not very easy when you have all the other states working on a particular unified system of taxation to set up your industry, your companies, to say, hang on, I don't give GST benefit, so my taxation system works on a separate method. And because the burden of reconciliation will all be on that state.
Okay.
No company, no trader in that state which has got any business with the rest of the states will actually be very pleased, and the pressure is actually going to be on the state. So I do not think that it's going to be very comfortable for states to say that, I stay out. What they will do, I'm sure they'll do, is during this period up to April, to extract as many comfort levels that they could do. For instance, exemptions on products, which is easier, which is comfortable for the state. They would try to maintain those. There would be compensation things which many of the consumer states are asking for. Those would be coming through. So, those would be ones where you would find lots of interesting developments.
Okay.
But for instance, a state like, say, West Bengal, primarily a consumption state, to say that I'm staying out and all its products come in on GST. I mean, the amount of bureaucratic hassle that West Bengal government will be facing within its own state is they don't even realize what the amount of trouble that they'll get into.
Okay.
So it's not very comfortable for a state to say that, hang on, everything has happened, but I still stay out, because the onus of adjustment, because this is a destination-driven tax, that the state which actually stays out has to do a fair amount of sorting out.
All right, so there will be pressure on the states to adopt the GST, even if they do not want to. But Mr. Dua, coming back to the point of the teething problems, as you said, and this could be perhaps one of them where the states are not falling in line. But other problems, if you talk about them from the administrative perspective, the relation between the center and the states, and the fact that right now we're assuming that there could be problems, but in case there are no problems, we're meeting that deadline. In case there are problems, then do we see these teething problems exist for a longer time? And in terms of the rates that will be decided for various products, I mean, that's a large exercise, isn't it?
Absolutely right. Even if this good progress on threshold limits, it's been yesterday sorted out, some more progress made today. First, the administrative or the managerial issue which comes to my mind is that this council will need to meet on an average every week for the next 20 weeks.
Right.
Not 20 weeks, sorry, 10 weeks, which is the 23rd of November is being given as because thereafter the time taken for legislations, etc. And the issues which they need to resolve are about that many. 10 major issues, somebody is listed them out, and I can share them with you. The biggest of these, most important of these, is going to be what are the items to be exempted.
Okay.
Number one, and there the perception between the states would vary. perceptions of the states will greatly vary. More important is the one about the rates. And the rates would be seen not from the central point of view, which is saying that whatever might happen, and the states would like to say, keep the rates high if you have to, but we got to be compensated for 5 years fully on what we are getting today. And an issue is going to be raised, particularly by the producing states, who were not exactly on board, if you would recall, saying, what about the increment delta, the increment which was what we would have got.
Right.
What about those? That's one. Second is going to be the issue of the the third is going to be the issue of the network. The Infosys chief executive mentioned it, saying, I think, and they are involved in the GST in a major manner. He's already said it's going to be a major challenge. Politically, the government has taken a stand, which I think is both has political necessity, as well as saying if you can't push it through now, it may not come through the next process, which is half a dozen state goings to poll next year, and 2 years down the line, the national elections. Reason being, the experience of most countries which have introduced this GST has been not exactly positive in the run-up immediately after the thing was introduced. Because, and that those were much smaller countries and much more computer-friendly, much more tax-paying countries. There also to get all the every transaction, because here is a transaction, ultimate tax is this, but we give you set-offs or the intermediates, raw materials, etc. And we are not a country where all these things, neither are we so computerized. Second, not everything, particularly of the small traders, etc., goes into the computer network. So there is going to be initially, I think, a inflationary pressure, because it will be those lower taxes will continue, plus there will be this larger tax and the set-offs not being given for all those things. So my fear is on a number of accounts when I say teething problems. And once it's introduced on 1st of April, I think before the national elections take place, there is about 2 years' time. That much time is certainly needed by the government to drive home the point that it is a good tax and not going to be not causing problems, which it could be doing, as I mentioned about the experiences of smaller countries, where it was seen to be burdensome in the immediate run rather than beneficial.
All right. So in conclusion, I say we made a good start with the GST Council and defining the exemption limit. And but moving on from here, there certainly would be issues and issues that could be perhaps political in nature, not just about reform.
Which are there for any movement, any reform.
I just forgot to mention one thing. States are going to be pressurizing. Sukma might agree with me on that. That states are going to be saying that you collect almost 10% of your indirect tax revenue by way of cesses. Why don't you part with those? And those cesses are huge,
I don't think that's
and center doesn't
major.
share.
I think the major thing would be the fact that the GST Council now is essentially the new finance ministry. It is not a question of that the GST Council will be meeting
finance
for 20 days.
Ministry of the whole country.
It is now it is now going to be the taxation policy setting arm of the government and the center and the states. And that is where administratively how quickly GST Council acquires a shape as a body.
As a
just as finance ministry used to be there as a North Block as a finance ministry. That will be the critical part. Because that is because it's not going to be just time to time. It is going to now need its own secretariat. It will now need its own set of officers. It will need a regular feeding in the way any tax policy army has to set up. And this is the big challenge that we might need very soon, not just the state finance minister, we might actually need a separate GST minister from every state, because it is impossible to assume that a finance minister of a state can spend more than half the year working in the GST Council, but it will have to be there. And that will be a major challenge, practical, which will come up very soon for the GST architecture.
All right. So indeed, challenges, big challenges do remain as far as GST is concerned. And thank you very much for talking about this. We'll take a very quick break. On the other side, we'll focus on the Monetary Policy Committee that has also been formulated by the government. All that and more on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching Policy Watch. Now let's focus on the Monetary Policy Committee that's been appointed by the government. Outside talent has been brought in the form of 3 distinguished academicians, and the move is expected to redefine the way monetary policy is formulated in the country. Ajay, though, I'll start with you. This really, given what had been happening over the past 1 year between Governor Raghuram Rajan and the Finance Ministry, so to say, of what all came out in the media, this move, what do you make of it? Is it a good step, or is it a step that could lead to once again a lot of prevarication, a lot of indecisiveness?
Let me put it this way. Now it is fait accompli. When I say fait accompli, because this change has been brought in through a legislative process. RBI Act of 1934 was amended in 2016, earlier this year, by the Act was amended, and a Monetary Policy Committee has been mandated by law.
Okay.
And the change, of course, for what purpose the RBI's objective would be, that's also more clearly defined, that while it will be acting to kind of manage inflation, but it will be in the context of the overall objective of growth. So the growth and two have been put in the Act itself. So now we have to, it is a law, whether RBI likes it or not, whether somebody else outside thinks that it is taking away the autonomy of the RBI, that's all. I think once the law was passed, that went away. What's happened in this the current week is while RBI had named its 3 members of the committee, the governor, the deputy governor in charge of policy, and another official, with the governor having a veto power.
Right.
The other 3 members were to be nominated by the government, and the government, people thought that they might put in time-trusted people of the government there. The government has done very well to, I think, pick up independent persons. All 3 economists, all 3 academicians, even practicing academicians, and now I think the committee can immediately get into work. Hopefully, if it gets going before the next policy review, which is due in the first week of October, then maybe we would have some decision which would be binding on the governor.
Okay.
Hitherto, the governor had with him a technical advisory committee as the very designation of the.
Yeah, the final call was his.
It was advisory. The governor, along with his lieutenants, was taking a decision. Now he is going to be bound by a decision of the Monetary Policy Committee, where it will be 4:3 if you take the governor's vote as equal to 2. It will still be respecting the governor's point of view, but he would have to reckon with what the other 3 people say, and hopefully all 3 of them, 2 of them are macroeconomists, Pami Dua, the Delhi School of Economics director, and Chetan Ghate, who was earlier a member of the TAC, and Chetan Ghate, he's from the Indian Statistical Institute, Delhi. He was also a member of the committee under Urjit Patel as a deputy governor, which actually has suggested this change, that let's have a monetary policy committee and let's also have this for inflation target fixed and through an understanding with the government of 4% plus minus 2%.
Right.
So I think what has been done is as per the governor, Reserve Bank governor's own recommendations. He made the recommendations after the Urjit Patel committee had submitted a report to him, and also as per the amendment to the law.
Right.
I think it's a good move, particularly because these 3 persons who've been appointed are for a fixed tenure of 4 years, which is non-extendable.
Okay.
So their independence
So it does not become a political appointment.
Absolutely.
All right, Shubhamay, but in terms of the larger message of reform, I think this is very critical in that context as well, about the government ensuring that things which were considered political decisions earlier, and we've seen, especially in the media, things being highlighted of confrontation on monetary policy of the RBI governor coming under pressure, and the RBI governor in turn saying that the finance ministry or whatever should not be doing so. In that sense, do you see a big reform push? This is a big reform push?
Certainly. It is a very major reform. Why is it a reform? Because the Monetary Policy Committee is not just a committee. The RBI governor earlier had the Technical Advisory Committee. So what distinguishes the MPC from the TSC? The difference is the entire record of the discussion of the MPC will have to be made public immediately and give the reasons why they have recommended a particular rate of interest. Till now, the TSC's position was TSC records would also come into public, but there was no legal validity on why a TSC position had been taken on or not taken on by the RBI governor.
Right.
So it was almost an advisory board telling the governor, but the governor finally exercising his own wisdom to decide on it. This is a clear change. Here the governor can change from the decision of MPC only if there is a sufficient amount of each position being carefully discussed, priced, separated, and only then the governor can give a different position. Otherwise, the position taken by the MPC is the position of the monetary policy. What does the monetary policy set? The rate of interest in the economy. What was the trouble between the government and RBI governors, not just the present one, but earlier governors too?
Right.
That government often felt that the mandate which the government expected from the monetary policy, from the governor, RBI governor, wasn't often coming through.
Okay.
So when, for instance, when there was a need to have a higher growth rate and a softer interest rate, the government felt the governor was playing hardball. That position cannot now occur again at all, because here is a set of independent experts.
And it's a
saying,
transparent process.
As I said, not only that, they've got the legal backing of what they are doing, and their records are supposed to be immediately along with the decision of the rate of interest on that day itself to be released to the public. So it is, so what they have said becomes as much a part of market's understanding of how monetary policies sees the current position as the governor's position. So it is, so the governor, for instance, still now, we used to have a governor giving a press conference after the rate of interest decision. Now, from 4th October, we don't actually, it won't be depending so much on that. We would be along with it reading the text of the decision, the recommendations made by each member.
Right.
And even those who are within RBI, the executive director, the deputy governor, they will have to clearly say why they differ from each other. So they will have to, and all of it will also have to be decided within a mandate that has been clearly been given by the government. And what is that mandate? That it is an inflation target with a plus minus range of 2% on either side of 4%. So it is this that they will actually be carefully apprising, giving their positions, suggestion, not just suggestion, but legally binding observation and position which the governor has to take.
Okay.
So it makes the entire process of decision almost like a cabinet decision of the government, except that within the cabinet, the internal discussion is never made public. Here, the internal discussion will be made public. The entire country will come to know immediately what is the position. So each sentence there will be carefully apprised, understood, and taken on.
All right.
This makes it a very big difference from what it was earlier. That the governor is now just not a governor.
All right, so
it's a part of a committee system.
So in conclusion, a positive move forward, both on
Absolutely.
GST. Very quickly, we're just out of time, Ajay.
No, absolutely. I think just in a lighter vein, talking about the cabinet decision is a collective one. One never gets to know if there was a difference.
Right.
And everybody, even if those members of the cabinet who might have differed with the proposal are bound by it once it is adopted by the cabinet, irrespective of where their points of view were. Here, it is a majority decision. persons can continue to hold their own views in private as well as in public.
Yeah, and even the governor can be in a minority over here and have a
Absolutely.
decision.
Absolutely.
And he doesn't get the right to
Except
emphasize
for-
his position.
Except that he has a veto vote
Only if
when
he
there
gets
is
a
a
split.
3 and 3.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to wrap up. We've run out of time, but thank you very much, Bhattacharya and Ajay Dua, for coming in and helping us understand these two big policy decisions of the week. We'll be back next week with another edition of Policy Watch. Thanks so much for watching.